Hi all, and welcome to the Narrowbox Comics channel. It's been a funny few weeks. Before I talk about this issue of The Rocketeer by IDW, it's worth mentioning what's been happening in comics news. And comics Twitter's been all a storm because of a viral video by a comic shop owner called Glenn, which led to US comic industry professionals to basically act like a bunch of school bullies and abuse him online, which led to Mark Millar coming to his rescue. Mark Millar is a staunch defender of the direct market, and he really did take offence to people attacking this comic shop retailer, like calling him racist and saying he smells of piss. He didn't like that, and I didn't like it. And I didn't think he'd said anything that was particularly outrageous, and he was a fairly harmless fellow. But they didn't like it. And he believes, like I do, that they're worth listening to. Now, Marvel and DC creators, they are fairly insulated from failure at this point, and the summit sales numbers for issues are far, far lower than they needed to be considered success. And I think the problem that I'm having with that is that it's creating a generation of entitled creators. Just have a cup of tea. And as a result of that, you're getting the idea that they're not really wanting to compete. They just expect to write comics and that people should just buy them. And it's not a great situation to be in. And the direct market is being looked down on. So, it's not an ideal situation. And then, I don't know who this Valerie D'Orazio person is, but she revealed that a number of these professionals are trying to tank the direct sales market. They want to get rid of comic book shops. Now, that seems absolutely bonkers to me, but it actually does fit with what Mark Millar's saying, is that these creators have no love for comic book shops. The audiences in comic book shops are quite critical. That we've all been in discussions as a comic fan. You've been discussing that was a crap book, this was a good book. That's the sort of lively debate that keeps sales churning. But these writers do not want to be criticised by by the public. They don't like it, and I think that's really the crux of what's happening here. And obviously, they want to switch to having their books sold through retail shops and libraries, because the sales numbers that are being reported are predominantly Marvel to wholesaler and wholesaler to store. They're the figures that are getting reported, but the ones that actually matter are customer, the store to final customer, and they're the ones that are not getting measured. So, when you hear that somebody's sold 20,000 copies of a book, how many people bought it? How many people have it in their collections? I think we already know from the speculative market that it's not often the figure that's reported, because that's why some books are far rarer. Like, people buy the number ones, and the number one has the high print run. But do people make it to number two? And that's invariably why you often find number twos that are much more expensive to buy in back issue, because there's just not that many of them. People never bought them, and they end up being destroyed or thrown out or whatever. So anyway, then Mark Waid loses the plot at Millar. He takes real offence to Mark Millar saying what he said, and then he gets into it by trying to get Mark Millar to start a fight with Gail Simone. She's just sitting there minding her own business, and then somebody says, look what Mark Waid said to Mark Millar on your defense, on your behalf. It's like, what? But luckily it's all been averted. Now, I'm not, I don't know the ins and outs of all of that stuff. I get the feeling that it's not going well. I've seen that the book being written about this whisper network that goes on in America, and Gail Simone's on the front cover, so make of that what you will. Let's see. So yeah, one of the other things that's come out about this is the ICV2. Like, loads of creators have been writing, look at this, look at these sales numbers. These are amazing sales numbers. It's like, they're not even that amazing considering where comics used to be. But the best part of it is, like, is it manga? Is manga in there? What's a graphic novel? We don't know what the definitions and the terms are. And there's one other thing that really does bother me. The figures for the entire US market are based on 125 stores, as if DC and Marvel don't know what stores these are. Like you could, and I think that's the thing. It's like it's just too much money to even waste trying to fiddle with the numbers anymore for the figures that they're actually, the believable figures that they'd actually expect to sell from the direct market. So I don't know. It's all shenanigans as far as I'm concerned. It's quite clear to see that the standard of comic books has dropped, and I think for me that's one of the issues that I'm formulating is the idea that demographics are the problem. So, for example, if you like the Rocketeer, are you going to really want to read something by Pride Voices? It's all well and good saying that there's comics for everyone, but if you're a comic book company and you're known for making one sort of book, you will attract an audience. Like comics, Marvel Comics is superhero comics, DC Comics is superhero comics. You start making gay superhero comic books, are you switching demographics then? We've seen this sort of thing with Doctor Who. So taking it from one demographic, giving it to another in order to kind of try and generate sales or create continue the longevity by targeting young fans that you believe will be a certain way. I think there's an argument that you could actually say that your demographics are basically the destiny of your industry. It's like if you are chasing a certain demographic now, that's going to be your future. Will those people always believe what they believe now? Will they probably become more conservative as they get older? But I think there's a genuine love of youth culture and trying to be where the youth are, that they're just not really respecting that youths are going to grow up into adults and that they've got an eye to the future now. So yes, they're passionate about certain causes, but they're also human beings that grow up, get older, and have concerns of their own. And if you don't get carried through that filter, that great filter of expectation versus reality, you don't get sales in the future. You don't get passed on to the next generation. So I would argue that there's the way that they do this is all a bit flawed. Anyway, on to this beauty. So we got the Rocketeer, issue 1. I'm not going to crack it open today because I don't want to ruin it at all. This isn't really a review, but I kind of just wanted to talk about this book because it jumped off the shelf at me. I mean, look at it. It's beautiful. It's great cover, great artwork. The Rocketeer, for me, is just such a great character. I mean, when I was a kid, they used to have these 10-minute RKO adventures, and they basically signified the end of kids' TV shows and transition into the early evening TV. And I loved them. There was, I think there was Lassie, which I could take or leave. Champion the Wonder Horse, which is basically Lassie, but a horse. And then the Lone Ranger. They had the Lone Ranger. That one I didn't like much. I kind of didn't get on with it. Zorro was another one. That was a banger. Zorro's one of my favorites as well. And then the last one that was my passion was the King of the Rocket Men. Like, it was only on for 5-10 minutes, and often I'd miss all the episodes, or they'd repeat them and I'd end up watching the same episode 5 times. That's the beauty of old-fashioned television. So yeah, King of the Rocket Men was my first introduction to that kind of normie superhero, because essentially, this was a mass audience serialized TV show for during the 1950s and 60s, and this was set in the 1940s, so it was set in wartime USA, and it had all that paranoia. So the actual flying sequences were pretty cheesy, but it felt like the adult world from a kid's perspective, and it always ended on a banger of a cliffhanger. So one of the ones that I remember was the Rocket Ranger, whatever, I don't know if he's a Rocket Ranger or whatever his name was called in the series, but the Rocket Man in the story, he gets his rocket pack built by this scientist who also builds other stuff, and this nefarious organization's trying to get the rocket pack and all this scientist equipment, and he's stashed this scientist in a cave, and then the bad guys come in and they melt the whole cave and turn it into lava, and it looks like the Rocket Man Jeff is about to get killed, and then it ends on this amazing cliffhanger. So it's a really exciting story. And when I discovered the Rocketeer, I initially thought it was the Rocket Man. So, you know, I immediately picked up the book and I loved it. And I didn't really get into it, but I was trying to figure out whether they were the same guy. And then they announced that they were making a movie. And that was, I think this was 1991. So I'd have been about 10, 11, something like that. And I remember I didn't have a video. I watched it on video at my auntie's house. I remember like getting the video from the video shop and watching it at my auntie's house. But I do also remember going to the pictures to see it. And it was the first time I'd been excited to go for a movie for myself. Do you know what I mean? I was really pumped to see it. And I remember the standee, the Art Deco standee, and just thinking, wow, this just looks amazing. And when the trailers came out, I used to stay up late to watch the trailers on this American TV movie show. And I just absolutely couldn't wait for it. So when I went to see it, it wasn't a letdown. It was an absolute banger of a film. So big fan of The Rocketeer. And I was hoping that this book would thrill me in that same way. I was kind of hoping, but it's not nostalgia. And let me be clear on that, because it's not just nostalgia. I've always thought that the Rocketeer is a good character. This book didn't meet my expectations. It sets up a new threat for Cliff Secord, and the threat looks really cool. That was what made me pick up the book. And it looks the weird thing about it is this book is like, it looks like it's a continuation of a story that IDW are telling about this character, but this is a good jumping on book if you've only seen the movie, because it dovetails so perfectly with the movie. It's like, this is a point in his life. Cliff has lost the rocket pack. Whatever happened in the previous story, I think it's the Great Race. You can go find that out. But for me, it doesn't matter. I can just pick it up from the movie, come into this book, and it kind of dovetails perfectly. So he's now just Cliff. His girlfriend's an aspiring actress, and he is trying to balance his relationship whilst, you know, carrying on his job. And he's feeling somewhat unfulfilled from his life as a Daredevil airshow pilot. So in the movie, the feds shoot his plane. The criminals that the feds are chasing across his airfield shoot his plane, and that nearly puts him out of business. So his motivation for acting in the movie is the fact that all he has is this rocket pack, and everything he's got hinges on it. Like, his future's gone down the toilet, and with his future, his chances of keeping his girlfriend, he's a bit insecure about that. So that theme is something they're continuing here, and that starts in the first few pages, that he's feeling that insecurity again. Even though he's been the Rocketeer, he's been the hero, he's won the day, he's got the girl, there's still that feeling. And it occurred to me when reading this that there's the things that make the Rocketeer such a compelling character are the exact same things that make Spider-Man so popular. So it's an underdog tale with dynamic action sequences. It's slightly bumbling yet capable hero. He's a man driven by a deep sense of duty and responsibility, and as well as a deep passion for excitement and adventure. So he's kind of, in this, it slightly makes more sense here than it does in Spider-Man, because obviously Spider-Man is more worried about an enemy finding out who he is and taking it out on his loved ones, whereas with this, it's a genuine concern of people who are in relationships. Is this the right relationship for me? Am I going to fit in with this? Is this a good fit? Am I going to be a good man? And he wants to be the Rocketeer. He wants to have that adventure again. So it's an added sense of emotional stakes. You know, he doesn't want to give up his relationship, but he also doesn't want to give up being the Rocketeer. And these things do not go together. If you're a fan of comic books, you know that those things don't go together. So, oh, and incidentally, I asked Lisa at Dark Star Comics in Farnborough, you know, she was, that's my local comic book shop, and asked her what's the best-selling comic in there. And she unsurprisingly and surprisingly told me it was The Amazing Spider-Man. So anything that follows a Spider-Man the beats that Spider-Man lays out, I think he's onto a winner, and I think they know that with this. They're kind of sticking to the knitting, and they're kind of drawing down on the history of like Mary Jane and Spider-Man as a jumping off point for stories. But the one thing I would say here is that this comic book, he isn't the Rocketeer anymore. So this almost kind of feels a little bit unbalanced, because there's a rising threat and no hero on the horizon. And that kind of story always is quite difficult to hook in, because you're basically pitching two different stories. Like Cliff's story is no longer related to this because he's not the Rocketeer. So that one, it would have been wise to somehow keep him as the Rocketeer, but showing that he couldn't be the Rocketeer, if you know what I mean. Maybe, I don't know, problem with the rocket pack, or whatever. But again, that's the storytelling thing. I think this book suffers from a certain element of not being able to balance the villains and the rising threat with the hero that's coming. So anyway, the stuff happens in the book. I won't spoil it, but I will say it lacks a bit of excitement, and the pacing just feels a bit off. And one of the things that really, really annoyed me, it ended this with a weird panel, and the logical ending was the panel before. So you get this really weird ending to the story, to the first chapter of the story, and it was a wasted page. You didn't need to be that page, and you could have got another page with the villains. So it just felt unbalanced, and that's a small irritation. It also feels like they spent a lot of time setting up Cliff and Betty's idyllic life. So his concerns aren't really mirrored in the pages that we're seeing. It just didn't quite work, what they're trying to set up emotionally, the emotional stakes. They did a good job of outlining what they're trying to do, but they didn't actually achieve it, if you know what I mean. But I'm gonna let that off, because I think it's just very hard to do in the pages you've got, and I just think it wasn't very well realized. Not sure how they managed to do this. I think maybe the editors fell asleep when they were editing, or they were under pressure to get other books out. But it was just a slight oversight that stopped this from being, a really good book. It's just an okay book. And I will say as well, this is $4.99 in the States. In the UK, this is a £4.15 book, and I think that value proposition is a little bit unbalanced, because I want more than nicely drawn images of a couple having dinner and discussing their relationship for that money. So this is Stephen Mooney, David Messina, and it's got a small creative team. There's Sean Lee, letters and design, Nicholas Nino, and assistant editor, and Scott Dunbeer, the editor. So I think the editors need to be a bit more on the ball with the next issues, because that ending of the first issue was just not good. It was not a good way to end it. But anyway, they're my thoughts. This is an okay book. I would pick it up if I were you. It's worth a look, and I'd like to hear what your thoughts are on this book. It's a great cover. I mean, the cover just jumps out at me. The Rocketeer is just such a great character, and he's so iconic. So you just can't walk past it. So it's a great license for IDW to have. My concern is that they might start messing up the character, but so far it looks great. Anyway, Narrowbox are interested in getting your feedback, so please comment and subscribe. Like, comment, and subscribe, and all that. As Otto von Bismarck said, only a fool learns from his own mistakes. The wise man learns from the mistakes of others. So I know that Narrowbox is planning other titles, and they are very keen to cultivate an audience that actually want to talk. And that's why the direct market, again, it seems like something you can just skip out on, but comic shops are a very, very integral part of comics. It's part of the culture. It's part of the way that we create. I mean, I'm personally writing my first comic book at the minute, but I've always been a part of comic book culture, and I love going to comic book shops. Buying books from Waterstones is dry as hell, and it's boring. I don't want to buy them from there. I actively don't buy comics from Waterstones. on principle because of that feeling. So finding a comic book shop local to me was a real eye-opener, and I've been spending a fortune in there. So yeah. And that brings me to the, what do you call the stuff that you have to do? The administrative side of the channel. So Narrowbox are keen to hear from you, and they would like me to tell you that in order to do the giveaways that they're planning, yeah, they want to do giveaways, so that's quite exciting, but we need to get to 100 subs on this channel. So I don't know what that means. I'm assuming it's the subscribers. So in order to get the giveaway, we need to get this channel to 100 subs. Sorry, I'm massacring this. So the first thing you got to do is you got to follow Narrowbox on Twitter and X, and then repost this video on your timeline. So share this video. I get to be famous on Narrowbox, and Narrowbox gets to be famous on Twitter. Or if you don't have Twitter, leave a comment here, like, subscribe, and share this video. Then if you've done all that, somebody from Narrowbox will follow you and DM you and ask for your details, and then they'll send you this issue. And then if you've, we can't do it to the UK. You can only do it to the UK. But if we get to that subscriber number and then another subscriber level, I'll let you know when they tell me. I don't know, but this is just the feedback I've gotten. This is only open to the UK now, but after 100 subscribers, it looks like they're going to open it up. So when I do one of these videos, the book that I do feature or cover, they will do a giveaway of. So if you've got any books that you'd like me to cover, let me know. I'll buy it, then I'll do a thing on it, and then give it to them, and then they'll do whatever they're going to do. If you're not in the UK, it's still a good idea to do all this, because then the sooner we get there, the sooner they'll open it up to other people. But yeah, I know they're keen to grow this channel. It's very important. And I think, again, this is a stand-in for the comics book shop. So it's definitely something that I want to get involved with as well. And I'll be, like I say, I'll be doing my own channel after I've done the first issue of my comic book Intrepid, which is about to go to the printers. Yeah, and yeah, that's the plan for this channel. So in my channel, I'm going to be talking about demographics and how it's become a bit of an issue in the comics industry. One of the theories that I have formulated myself is that we are creating a situation where people don't know what they're going to open a book to. You don't really want to read a book all the way through in a comic book shop. You're not going to buy it straight after. I mean, I always do that. I read the first 5 pages and then I say, decide on that. I don't want to read the whole book and then buy it. That seems ridiculous to me. So maybe some people do that. I'd like to know that again. But for me, it's like those first 5 pages. If you're not the demographic for that book, you're not going to buy it. So Marvel seem to have this idea that they are a lifestyle brand now, and that representation and inclusion are guiding principles that should be in all titles. But my point is, those are noble qualities to have. But if you are only known, if you become only known for equity and inclusion, you are going to push a huge number of your demographic base away, because they don't want to keep seeing it in there. You want to read a book, and like Glenn said, you want to read Steve Rogers. You don't want to read Riri Williams insert. You know what I mean? You want to read Tony Stark. You don't want Riri Williams. You don't want legacy Captain America. You want actual Captain America. So, that's just an issue that I would say is more about demographics than political or activist mentality. So that's going to be my channel. That's going to be my point of view, and that's what I'm going to be looking at. So in the new year, I'll be starting my channel, so keep an eye out for that. And yeah, thanks for listening to this today, and see you later.